The year was 1969, and Honor Moore was a graduate student with dreams of becoming a writer and yearning for radical change in a country that was in full turmoil. Abortion would not be legal for 4 more years, and Moore was pregnant. She terminated that pregnancy, and 55 years later, she's ready to write about it. In her new book, A Termination, Moore looks at her choices not just about abortion, but relationships with family, lovers, her own body, and much more. And she joins me now.
Well, I'm very happy to be here, Kelly.
I am so happy to have you sitting here and talking about this topic in your new book. So this isn't the first time that you've mentioned your abortion before, but the first time that you've dedicated a full book to that. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I wrote a poem in 1992.
Okay.
There was a big march in Washington to support Roe v. Wade, and at that point, it did not go down. You know, it would be, well, I guess 30 years later that it did. But anyway, yes, I wrote a poem, but then it seemed to me that younger women, I wanted younger women to understand that when I terminated my pregnancy, when I had my abortion, it was the era when my brothers and male friends were trying to get out of the draft to Vietnam, many of them. And really procuring an abortion was the female version of that. This was not loaded up with all the anti-choice, anti-abortion rhetoric that followed Roe v. Wade, and that, starting with the Hyde Amendment, which still withholds federal funding for reproductive care for poor women. So then it just got worse and worse and worse with the protests at the clinics, the murders of abortion providers, and so on. And, interestingly, I started this book at the end of 2020, and I actually finished it a week before the Dobbs decision came up, ending Roe v. Wade. So
that's what I was going to ask. If you didn't write it before then, but did it change the trajectory of the book?
Well, the trajectory of the book was, the context really was the Roe v. Wade era and the beginning of what was then called women's liberation, and that abortion rights was a major issue. And, I was scared. I was all alone. In 1969 in New Haven. There was no internet telling me there was this thing called women's liberation in New York and California. There just wasn't. So, and the trajectory of the book was about not having the freedom to choose having an abortion and having to go to a psychiatrist and so on and so forth, and needing to have the resources to be able to do that. But also, I really didn't want to be a mother then. I ended up not having children. I do have 8 brothers and sisters, but I didn't want to be a mother then. And I wanted to write, and somehow I managed to make that decision. And in the book, I wanted to see who that 23-year-old woman was who all alone made a decision on her own behalf. I like to say before I had a behalf. I mean, I didn't have a self. And so the book is in a way about the acquisition of the beginning of a self who could make decisions for herself.
And you talk about in the book as well the contrast with your mom and, your own dreams and how you kind of saw your mother's reality, the fact that she was always pregnant, mom of 9. I mean, you just talked about your siblings. So how did that play into your decision back then?
Well, the short, jokey version is I thought if I had 1 child, I'd have 9.
Okay,
that it was like
once
some sort of like eating ice cream, you can't stop.
Okay.
My mother, had 9 children. The final one was born in 1962. In 1964, she started writing a book, which was published in 1968. And she went on the very same kind of book tour that I'm on now.
Wow.
And then she died, sadly, at 50 years old. But she had begun another kind of life after 9 children. And I thought, well, why not go to the writing without the 9 children?
And
that's the joke.
Well, and how was your decision to having an abortion also part of, you mentioned this, like finding your own voice and finding your own self?
Well, it seems like an odd juxtaposition, but interestingly, every time I mention, some before the book came out, they say, well, what are you writing about now? They say, I've read your book, or there's a moment, then the woman tells me about her abortion story. And it's like 98% of the women I've talked to, including a Lyft driver in LA. You know, each woman, they always say what I felt. They say, I wanted to have my own life. Either they'd already had 2 children, or they weren't in love with the boyfriend, or you know, they were in the middle of graduate school. A woman I know had just gotten a fellowship. She's a historian. She just got a fellowship to study with the major historian in America, and she was a young woman. It was like, no, I am not gonna. I want to do this now. And someone gave me a button in Berkeley, very Berkeley. It's a bright silver button. It says, abortion is normal. And that is, you know, it wasn't normal, but it should be normal. And, you know, at the beginning of the struggle to make abortion legal, the idea was to repeal all abortion law. So that it would be a little like getting your teeth cleaned, you know, that it's nobody's business and it's not governed by law, you know.
This is going to be a book that I think a lot of people are going to be thankful that you were able to write. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing your experience. And Honor will be at the Elliott Bay Book Company in Seattle tonight, October 7th at 7 p.m.
Please come.
Please come.